everyone. So today we're going to talk about Executive Order 1417-2. And as you can see in my beautiful notes, we're going to go in a little bit of depth in it. So, this executive order was signed on January 20, 2025, and it's called Restoring Names That Honor American Greatness. And in particular, I'm going to talk about the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America now that President Trump signed that order. In a different order, he established February 9 as the National Day of the Gulf of America. But I wanted to go through a little bit of history. The name Gulf of Mexico is a testament to its history of cultural exchanges and colonial impact. So back in time, the Mexico portion stems from the ancient Mexica civilization, and these were the Aztecs. Another civilization was the Mayas, who referred to the Gulf as Chactemal, and this means the red place. Spanish invaders referred to the Gulf as Mar del Norte or Seno Mexicano. These names reflected both geographical and political considerations, emphasizing the Gulf's location relative to Mexico, a precise territory in Spanish colonial empire. In 1845, the United States took over Texas, which was part of Mexico at that time. So these break relationships between both countries, giving rise to an interventionist war that lasts until 1848. In that year, Mexico came up with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, where Mexico gave up Texas, New Mexico, and Alta California. In this short video, we can see the parts that Mexico gave up during that war. So, the executive order said that the Gulf of Mexico has long been a vital resource for the United States and will always be a permanent part of America. The executive order required the Secretary of the Interior to take all appropriate actions to rename as the Gulf of America the U.S. continental shelf area bounded on the northeast, north, and northwest by the state of Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida, and extending to the seaward boundary with Mexico and Cuba in the area formerly named as the Gulf of Mexico. And here are another parts that I just added, and you can pause the video to if you want to take a look at it. And it's just what President said, why they changed the name, and why it was important for the United States to do this change. So, after all those concepts and all those boundaries that we just established, I wanted to show you these two images. So, in my opinion, this executive order was not constitutional because President Trump wanted the name Gulf of America to be all over the world. But in reality, this executive order just applies within the boundaries of the United States. It doesn't have to apply in Mexico or Argentina or Colombia because the U.S. law is just for the United States. So here are some bullet points that I wanted to partially show. So according to sovereign limits, the maritime, I cannot pronounce that word very well.
Maritime.
Yes, maritime boundaries between Mexico and the United States in the Pacific Ocean and Gulf of Mexico were established through a series of bilateral agreements that were reached in 1970, 1976, and 1978. And Google Maps, the big company established in California, that means in the United States, changed it. And that's okay. I mean, it's a company created in the United States. But what they don't think about is that almost everybody uses it. But, according to Google, people that live in the United States is gonna see in that part Gulf of America. The people living in Mexico are gonna see Gulf of Mexico. And the people in other places around the world are gonna see both names. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum dismissed Google's move, noting that the decree only applies to the US. That's what I'm saying. And suggesting that her country would not comply with it. In her own words, the Gulf of Mexico is still the Gulf of Mexico. Now, according to the Convention on the Law of the Sea in 1982, the Gulf has maritime boundaries that were agreed upon and established long ago. The name change pushed by the White House lacks historical grounds and is seen as an exclusively political action. The executive order made an impact on federal agencies that map or references the Gulf and on tech giants like Google. Mexican Foreign Minister Juan Ramón de la Fuente said that the new designation can only apply to the maritime portion under the U.S. control. And finally, something, I don't know how to call it, funny maybe, I guess? The White House banned the AP News Agency for writing about the Gulf of Mexico in its coverage, and not the Gulf of America. Anyways, that's all I have. I hope that was enough and that you were able to understand some little things and that you were able to see all the connections from the history and how that should be applied to this new executive order that Donald Trump just issued. Take care. Bye-bye. Miss Banana out. Bye.